Thank you very much. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. Order. Does any member wish to give a notice of a motion? If there's no member, then we shall proceed to Are you sure? Are you sure there's nobody? Okay. May we then proceed to the motion on the order paper as printed. Honorable Chief Whip.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I want the Council to note that on the 26th of August 2010, the National Council of Provinces passed a resolution to the effect that Parliament would establish a parliamentary interfaith council and setting out the objectives, composition, and mandate of the Interfaith Council. Recognize the need for a platform for an activist parliament that would advance nation building and social cohesion. Believes that Parliament has the necessary mechanism in place to ensure that the objective is met, and resolve in concurrence with the National Assembly to abolish the Interfaith Council. I shall move.
Thank you very much. As there are no speakers list, I shall now put the question, and the question is that the motion be agreed to. As the decision is dealt with in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution, I shall first ascertain as to whether all delegation heads are present in the House. Are they all present in the House? In accordance with Rule 71, I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Is there any province that wishes to make a declaration of vote? In the absence of any, we shall now proceed to the voting on the question. I shall do this in an alphabetical order per province. Eastern Cape? Are we using the machine?
No.
Oh.
We're voting for.
Then may you speak then to the mic.
We're voting for.
In favor?
Yes.
Okay.
In favor.
Free State? Vrystaat? Gauteng? Can we rather just use the mics because just to be consistent? Gauteng? You switch your on, Rabika. Gauteng, may you please speak to the mic because it's off?
It was not on.
Yes.
In favor.
KwaZulu-Natal?
Sisakeleche.
Limpopo?
Ndotende.
Mpumalanga?
Tesendiakis.
North Cape? Northwest?
In favor, Chairperson.
Western Cape?
In favor, Chairperson.
All 9 provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the motion as agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. The Secretary will read the first, second, and third orders of the day.
Consideration of Custom Duty Bill, Bill 43, and of report of Select Committee on Finance thereon. Consideration of Custom and Excise Amendment Bill, Bill 44B, and of report of Select Committee on Finance thereon. Consideration of Customs Control Bill, Bill 45B, and of report of Select Committee on Finance thereon.
Honorable Charles de Beer.
Honourable Chairperson, the Customs Bills creates a clear and transparent customs legal framework that supports a predictable environment aligned to international conventions and best practice. Multinational companies that trade internationally are familiar with this customs environment and therefore require a legal framework that underpins predictability and consistency to ensure alignment of our customs regime with the World Customs Organizations and the revised Kyoto Convention. The primary aim of the bills are as follows: to provide systems and procedures for customs control of all goods and services entering or leaving the Republic, to enable the effective collection of tax on such goods imposed in terms of the tax levying acts, to facilitate the implementation of other legislation applicable to such goods and services, and supports the promotion of exports and business competitiveness whilst stimulating domestically orientated activity and supporting small, medium and micro enterprises. Honourable Chairperson, the Minister said in his budget speech that during 2013, SARS detained 400 containers holding suspected counterfeit clothing, footwear and textiles. During February 2014, SARS seized various narcotics. Customs operations achieved considerable success in the detection of drugs, endangered species, explosives, firearms, ammunition, currency, illicit CDs, DVDs, and tobacco products, as well as counterfeit goods at ports of entry and mail centres. Honourable Chairperson, the greatest threat to our manufacturing sector and this industrialisation programme remains illicit trade that undermines our economy, and therefore these control bills seek to limit places of entry and exit into and from the Republic of South Africa. The entry of high-risk goods will be limited to specific places of entry and exists thus allowing SARS to focus enforcement efforts in places where it is most needed. Chairperson, these enforcement provisions are aligned with the provisions of the Constitution but gives customs officers sufficient powers to combat the above-mentioned illicit trade activities. Chairperson, the biggest issue raised had been that of inland terminals like City Deep. The intention was not to close inland container terminals or disrupt the seamless movement of goods. Rather, the intention was to retrieve better information prior to the goods landing in the harbour. Issues range from inland ports, how customs fraud can be stopped, the level of non-compliance in inland ports, turnaround times for processing and clearance. The term inland terminal and not that of inland port had always been used in current legislation. There is consensus that City Deep was not an inland port but rather a licensed inland container terminal. The Customs Control Bill will not result in the demise of City Deep. The current customs laws provide for inland terminals and not inland ports, so will the new proposed bills as well. The only difference will be that where goods were previously allowed to move inland on the basis of a manifest, the importer will now be required to submit a clearance declaration. This declaration will provide better information to SARS to manage the relevant risks that goods crossing our borders pose to the country. The Customs Control Bill specifically seeks to provide a legal framework to facilitate smooth movement of goods at the place of entry or access in terms of international agreements with adjoining countries. The bill therefore creates a legal framework for a one-stop border post to facilitate trade between South Africa and the rest of the continent. Parliament recently ratified the agreement between South Africa and Mozambique for the establishment of a one-stop border post at the Lebombo, Resano, Garcia along the Maputo corridor. There are also penalties, Chairperson. The bills distinguish between two categories of offences, namely more serious and less offences, a category 1 and a category 2. In conclusion, Chairperson, the customs bills therefore lay a solid foundation for South Africa regarding customs administration of goods imported and exported to and from South Africa. The bill supports government strategy to facilitate trade and improve control over goods crossing our borders. I therefore move for the adoption of the report and the bills. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. That concludes the debate. I shall now put the question, and the question in respect of the first order. The question is that the bill be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 63, I shall first allow political parties to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Is there any political party that wishes to make a declaration of vote? Democratic Alliance.
Honorable Chair, I just want to confirm all three bills were read. I'm doing the declaration on the 2 and 3. Okay, fine. The DA acknowledged that the bill, the Customs and Excise Amendment Bill, in its current form is outdated. However, Section 18 of the current Customs and Excise Act provides for special provisions in respect of customs and excise manufacturing warehouses. SARS confirmed that it can only effectively control the movement of goods across our border and the risk it poses if it has the necessary information. Currently, SARS is unable to monitor all goods at the point of entry or exit. SARS proposed as a fallback position a clause to address any unforeseen or unintended consequences that may rise from the implementation or the enforcement of the provision of the bill. The DA have therefore proposed that Section 18 of the bill in its current form be retained, and therefore have voted against the bill. In section, the third one, the Customs Control Bill, Honourable Chair, the draft bill is in circulation since 2009 with various stakeholders participating and expressing interest in customs procedure, including goods to be imported or exported from our country or persons entering or leaving South Africa. Provisions in amendments also relate risk management for SARS. The DA made suggestions on the definition of inland imports or dry port as a recognized place of entry where cross-border trains may enter or leave South Africa, and an inland port be designated as a place of specific origin or destination where contained cargo may enter or leave South Africa, and that goods that were imported on a foreign-going vessel to offload within 3 days of arrival. Honourable Chair, the proposed amendments made by the DA is to enhance customs control and to protect our local manufacturers as well as our markets in South Africa. The DA therefore voted against the bill. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other political party that wishes to make a declaration of vote? ANC? Can the ANC just indicate to us which, because he made a declaration on both, yes, on 2 and 3. Therefore, I would allow you an opportunity if you make a declaration of vote on one, indicate which one. If there's another ANC member or any other political party that wishes to make a declaration, just indicate which one are you making a declaration on. ANC?
Thank you, Chairperson. We are actually making a declaration on all the three bills.
All
of
the
them.
three?
Yes, as ANC, that we do support all the bills because they seek to actually streamline the activities of SARS and as well as manufacturing in the country. And we really support that. We understand the DA, that they're actually opposing everything, even things that are very good for the country. And we wanted to actually reiterate that all the three bills as presented are supported by the African National Congress. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Is there any other political party that wishes to make a declaration? Oh, okay. Order, honorable members. If you say Icona now, I may hear Icona. Okay. That concludes then the debate, and I shall now put the question in respect of the first order, and the question is that the bill be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 63, I shall first put, in any case, I've allowed you to make your declaration of vote. We shall now proceed to the voting on the question. Members will vote by pressing their buttons if they are working. Let's first ascertain whether if your machines are working. All right. You may proceed with the voting on the first. Are we done with voting on the first? Can we then have the results if members have? Okay. We've got 31 members who voted in favor and 2 members against, and we don't have any abstention. Therefore, the majority of members have voted in favor. I therefore declare the bill as agreed to in terms of Section 75 of the
Chairperson.
Constitution.
No, Chairperson, I was hoping that my vote was captured because my hand was up. The machine.
Okay. So your machine was not working. Okay. We'll then add it onto the 31. No, his machine was not working at the time. I shall now put the question in respect of the second order, and the question is that the bill be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 63, I shall now allow political parties to make their declaration of vote if they so wish, and I guess you have done that. All right, fine. We then proceed with the voting. Are all our machines working? Not yet. Okay. All right, those members whom their machines are not working, may you just indicate by show of hand. But those for which they are working, can you just press the button? It looks like now the majority. Oh, it's working. Are we sure? All right. Then the voting is closed. Can we then get the outcome? Okay. Thank you very much. 26 members voted in favor, 6 against, and 0 abstention. Therefore, the majority of members voted in favor. I therefore declare the bill as agreed to in terms of Section 75 of the Constitution. I shall now put the question in respect of the third order. The question is that the bill be agreed to. I would take it that the question of declarations have also been dealt with. We shall now proceed to the voting on the question. Members may vote by using their machines. No, mine is working. Honorable Van Rooyen, the special delegate from Free State, we just want to check, confirm whether if you are voting in favor or against. In favor, okay. Therefore, honorable members, we have 30 members in favor, 6 against, and 0 abstention. The majority of members have voted in favor. I therefore declare the bill as agreed to in terms of Section 75 of the Constitution. The Secretary will read the 5th, 6th, and 7th orders of the day. Okay, the Secretary will read the 4th order of the day.
Consideration of Science and Technology Laws Amendment Bill, Bill 36B, and of report of Select Committee on Education and Recreation thereon.
Honorable Makate.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, allow me to make a statement on the Science and Technology Laws Amendment Bill 2014. The bill was formally introduced to Parliament in October 2013 to amend the 6 pieces of legislation of Science Boards and Council, and it has not been amended by the Select Committee on Education and Recreation. The bill appropriately amends certain clauses in the following 6 statutes of Science Councils, namely Scientific Research Council Act of 1998, National Research Foundation Act of 1998, Academy of Science of South Africa Act of 2001, Women Sciences Research Council Act of 2008, Technology Innovation Agency Act of 2008, and South African National Space Agency Act of 2008. Chairperson, it should be noted that the Science Council and boards in South Africa play an integrated role in the development of science through promotion of knowledge creation, research and development, creation of norms and standards, among others. As we may all know, a key characteristic of any successful board of council lies in the efficiency of its operations and governance. In the past, the department and Parliament noted that there were challenges such as, 1, the delays in the appointment and replacement of members of science boards and science council. Inefficiency in the appointment processes can result in a lack of leadership that may result in major business decisions being neglected. In order to clearly establish the efficiencies affecting science councils and boards, the department conducted a legislative review to identify factors causing inefficiencies in operations and governance of science boards or councils. The review revealed that cumbersome processes for the appointment of members of the boards, inconsistencies in the appointment of the chief executive officers, and a number of inconsistencies in the processes of extending the term of office of members of the board. Thus, the Science and Technology Laws Amendment Bill 2014 introduces the following amendments, among others: to streamline processes for the appointment of members of boards or council, to harmonize the process for the appointment of chairpersons of boards or council, to provide for the extension of term of office of members of board when necessary, and to provide for dissolution and reconstitution of boards to strengthen the governance of the institution. I therefore put Science and Technology Laws Amendment Bill before the Council for adoption. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. That concludes the debate. I shall now put the question that the question be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 63, I shall first allow political parties to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Is there any political parties that wishes to make a declaration of vote? We shall now proceed to the voting on the question. Members will vote by pressing their machines. Give it a second. It's working now.
Everybody votes in favor.
Have all members voted? All members who vote in favor say aye. Aye. All members who vote against say no. Okay. We take it that the majority of members have voted in favor. I therefore declare the bill as agreed to in terms of Section 75 of the Constitution. The Secretary will read the 5th, 6th, and 7th order of the day.
Consideration of reports of Select Committee on Education and Recreation, the 2001 UNESCO Convention on the Protection of Underwater Cultural Heritage, the 1999 Second Protocol to the 1954 Hague Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the event of armed conflict, the 1995 UNIDROIT Convention on stolen or illegally exported cultural objects.
Honorable Makate.
Chairperson, as a caring government that seeks to nurture the diverse forms of culture, ANC government has ratified 3 international agreements of the United Nations. All the conventions were submitted to Parliament for accession in accordance with the Section 231(2) of the Constitution of South Africa of 1996. Chairperson, the first agreement is the UNESCO Convention on the Protection of Underwater Cultural Heritage. This convention provides for the protection of cultural heritage that is over 100 years old, and which also has a historical or architectural character, but which lies on an ocean bed or ocean floor. Such heritage, Chairperson, refers to under proponents of culture such as shipwrecks, fish traps, and shell heaps. The convention expanded its objection for creation of sustainable jobs, opportunities for those in the disadvantaged communities who can be drawn into the maritime geological space as maritime salvage workers. Chairperson, the second agreement relates very closely to the first convention, but it restricts itself to sanctioning the explicit trade or transfer of stolen or illegally exported cultural objects. Chairperson, the UNIDROIT Convention on Stolen or Illegally Exported Cultural Objects puts in place uniform rules and conditions for claims and restoring stolen cultural objects. A key benefit of the UNIDROIT Convention is that it improves on 1970 UNESCO Convention not requiring stolen cultural items to be inventoried. As such, the obligation to return stolen item is not obstructed. The third and the final convention signed into accession by the ANC government is the second protocol to Hague Convention of 1954 for the protection of cultural property in the event of armed conflict. This second protocol improves the application and effectiveness of the original convention by establishing and enhancing systems for protecting designated cultural property during the event of international or non-international armed conflict. In practice, Chairperson, this second protocol requires countries to put in place practical measures to safeguard cultural property during their peacetime. This includes the development of inventories of those cultural properties, any planning of emergency measures for planning cultural property against fire and structural collapse, planning for the removal of movable property and the provision for adequate in situ protection in the event of an armed conflict, and designating competent authorities responsible for the safeguarding of cultural property. Chairperson, the Select Committee on Education and Recreation engaged with the Department of Arts and Culture on all three agreements and now commends the Department of Arts and Culture for its studious management of the process of acceding these agreements. And it is with great pleasure that we support the UNESCO Convention on the Protection of Underwater Cultural Heritage, the UNIDROIT Convention on Stolen or Illegally Exported Cultural Objects, and the Protocol to Hague Convention of 1954 for the protection of cultural property in the event of armed conflict. Chairperson, I therefore put all these international agreements before this House for adoption. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. That concludes the debate. I shall now put the question in respect of the fifth order. And the question is that the report be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 71, I shall first allow provinces the opportunity to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Is there any province that wishes to make a declaration of vote? In the absence of any, we shall now proceed to the voting on the question. I shall do this in an alphabetical order per province. But before that, I shall first ascertain as to whether all delegation heads are present in the House. Are they all present? Yes. All right. We shall then proceed with the voting. Eastern Cape? Can you press the machine? There it is. There it is now.
Oh. Eastern Cape votes in favor, Chairperson.
Okay. Free State?
Voted.
Yes, it's working.
Are they working now?
Yes.
All of them? Okay, fine. All right. All 9 provinces, I'm informed that they voted in favor. Therefore, in the light of that, we then declared the fifth order as agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. I shall now put the question in respect of the sixth order. The question is that the report be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 71, I shall first allow provinces an opportunity to make their declaration of vote. Is there any? In the absence of any, I assume that there's no head of delegation who has moved. So we shall proceed to the voting now. Can we use our machines again? That was very quick, that other vote. Not working. What in there? Okay. All 9 provinces have voted in favor. I therefore declare the vote as agreed to. The report is agreed to in terms of Section 65 of the Constitution. I shall now put the question in respect of the seventh order. And the question is that the report be agreed to. In accordance with Rule 71, I shall first allow provinces an opportunity to make their declaration of vote if they so wish. Is there any province that wishes to? In the absence of any, we shall now proceed with the voting. I once more take it that there's no delegation yet that has moved. Can we now proceed to the voting? Okay,
Machine doesn't
still
work.
not working.
Machine
Okay,
wami.
the whip of the, is it working? Yes. Okay, no, that's fine.
Most expensive systems you can get them from Germany.
Machine wami.
Awusebenzi.
Awusebenzi.
Mpumalanga, Western Cape, not voted. You vote in? Mpumalanga?
Favor.
Western Cape? Okay. Then all 9 provinces voted in favor. I therefore declare the report is agreed to in terms of section 65, sorry, of the Constitution. We now come to the subject for discussion as printed on the order paper. Yes. Honorable John Jeffrey, the Deputy Minister for Constitutional Development. Sir.
Thank you, House Chairperson. House Chairperson, Premier of the Eastern Cape, other honourable members. Indeed, life has changed for the better since 1994. We now live in a country where all are equal before the law. We no longer live in a country where some people are treated better than others because of the colour of their skin. We've achieved much and we've got much to celebrate. Our government has delivered. We promised we would create a better life for our people, and we've done so. Our country is steadily making progress in the key priorities it has set for itself. We take particular pride in the following achievements, amongst others, such as the expanded public works program that has created work opportunities for our people. We have built houses, rolled out electricity and clean running water, and increased access to health care. We have built schools and clinics and helped people with social grants. The topic of today's debate is celebrating 20 years of changing lives through human rights. Human rights are part and parcel of the very things that make a person a person. Every part of our being, the right to be who we are, to not be discriminated against on the basis of race, gender, disability, and the right to choose with whom we want to associate, the right to speak our mind and to say what we think, the right to go to a clinic when we are sick. Each and every aspect of our daily existence is linked either directly or indirectly to the existence of human rights. Indeed, we can point to the many achievements of government over 20 years. We often look at the number of laws that we've passed or the numbers of new policies that we've implemented that enhance our people's political, civil, and socio-economic rights. We quote our Constitution, one which is hailed as one of the most progressive in the world. Our Constitution is often referred to as transformative, as it requires and assists in facilitating the complete transformation of our society from a culture that was oppressive, secretive, and profoundly disrespectful of human rights to a human rights-based culture. But perhaps we should pause for a moment and look at how our people as human beings and reflect how we have changed over the past 20 years, how by allowing others their human rights, we have become human ourselves. We often speak of a nation that was divided, a nation of 2 states. But do we even remember how deep those divisions ran? We were people living in the same country, all children of the African soil, but living worlds apart, both living in fear and distrust of the other, living under a system that robbed all of us of our humanity. The South African poet Christopher van Wyk, who was born in Soweto in 1957, wrote this poem in 1979 called Injustice. Me, I cry easily if you're hurt, and I would have carried the crosses of both the murderer and the thief if they'd let me, and I'd lived then. I grasp helplessly at cigarettes during riots and burn my fingers hoping. My nose has never sniffed tear gas, but I weep all the same, and my heart hurts aching from buckshot. My dreams these days are policed by a million eyes that baton charge my sleep and frog march me to a shaken morn. I can't get used to injustice. I can't smile no matter what. I'll never get used to nightmares, but often I dream of freedom. House Chairperson, we no longer have to dream of freedom. We have attained it. As the 20-year review describes it, we've emerged from a deeply divided society, deeply divided and violent past into a vibrant democracy that has made major strides in improving the lives of its citizens. In the first decade after 1994, we put most of our efforts into building democratic institutions. We built our Chapter 9 institutions. We took the old South African police force, which was really a paramilitary organization, and the 10 homeland agencies and the non-statutory forces, and rationalized and incorporated them into the new South African Police Service, the SAPS. We've amalgamated the apartheid education departments and put in place a new curriculum. We had to do the same with our magistrates. The amalgamation of the Departments of Justice of the former TBVC states and homelands with that of the Department of Justice from the old apartheid government only took place in 1997. From 1997 to 2002, a rationalization process followed, and from 2003 to today, 227 new posts of magistrates at various levels were created, of which 133 were created during the current term of this government. Before 1994, our judges were overwhelmingly white and male. I think there was only one female judge. And we had to start making the bench more representative. Today, we can proudly say that our judicial officers truly reflect and embrace the vision of our Constitution. We're well on track in creating a judiciary that does indeed broadly reflect the race and gender composition of our country, a judiciary which has brought about much-needed change in the lives of our people through a variety of groundbreaking judgments. When we fought for a free and democratic South Africa, we also fought to bring about a just and fair society where all are equal before the law and all have access to justice. After 1994, special interventions were introduced to address gender-based violence and prevent violence to women and children. These interventions include many pieces of legislation, specialized courts dealing with sexual offenses, Tutuzela care centers, specialized police units, victim-friendly rooms at police service points, empowering SAPS members, prosecutors, and magistrates with specialized skills, and keeping sexual offenders on long-term supervision on their release from prison. We have the Kusaleka one-stop centers to offer victims of gender-based violence a range of integrated services that include psychosocial support, medical care, and shelter services. We have extended legal aid as part of our constitutional obligations. Legal Aid South Africa's personnel have increased from less than 500 in 2001 to more than 2,600 in 2012. New legal aid matters have increased significantly. Legal Aid South Africa has its national footprint in 64 justice centers and 64 satellite offices and was allocated a budget of 1.4 billion rand. It assisted clients in 438,844 matters in the last financial year. General advice services were rendered to 297,835 clients, of which 44,247 was by the call center. This means that we have over the years given millions of our people the right to legal representation at state expense and increased access to justice for them. The United Nations recently chose South Africa for the launch of the Free and Equal, a global campaign to promote and respect the rights of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and intersex people. South Africa was the first country in the world to outlaw discrimination based on sexual orientation, and the 5th country in the world and the first in Africa to legalize same-sex marriages. The Department of Justice and Constitutional Development fully endorses and advocates the rights of LGBTI people as human rights, which should be enforced and respected at all times. Raising awareness of human rights remains a major challenge. The department has a program called Access to Justice and the Promotion of Constitutional Rights, which is funded by the European Union and implemented by the Foundation for Human Rights. Under this program, the department has been working with civil society on improving access for vulnerable and marginalized groups, improving awareness and knowledge on human rights in South Africa, and enhancing participatory democracy through public policy dialogues and strengthening civil society organizations. House Chairperson, we've achieved a great deal and we've much to be proud of, but we cannot sit back and now say we've arrived at our destination. There is still so much that we need to do to further enhance human rights in our society. We need to reduce the number of people who live in households with a monthly income of below 419,000 per person to zero. We need to reduce the inequality as measured by the Gini coefficient from 0.69 to 0.6. It is all very well to look at our achievements as government in terms of housing and access to water and electricity, but for those without a house or water or electricity, this doesn't mean very much to them. It's all very well to talk about the reduction in the murder rate by 27.2% for the last 9 years, but this doesn't mean much for a person whose loved one has been brutally murdered. We know what we've achieved over the past 20 years. We know what we need to do over the next 20 years. The National Development Plan envisages a South Africa where opportunity is determined not by birth, but by ability, education, and hard work. Above all, we need to improve the quality of education and ensure that more people are working. We need to make the most of our people, their goodwill, skills, and resources. We must ensure that skilled, technical, professional, and managerial posts better reflect the country's racial, gender, and disability makeup. We must increase the quality of education so that all children have at least 2 years of preschool education and all children in grade 3 can read and write. We have to continue to roll out affordable access to quality health care while promoting health and well-being. We need to continue to establish effective, safe, and affordable public transport and produce sufficient energy to support industry at competitive prices, ensuring access to poor households while reducing carbon emissions per unit of power by about 1/3. We have a duty to ensure that all South Africans have access to clean water in their homes, so to reach those who we haven't been able to reach thus far. We must realize a food trade surplus with 1/3 produced by small-scale farmers or households and ensure household food and nutrition security. We need to entrench a social security system covering all working people with social protection for the poor and other groups in need, such as children and people with disabilities, and realize a developmental, capable, and ethical state that treats citizens with dignity. We must ensure that all people live safely with an independent and fair criminal justice system, and we must broaden social cohesion and unity while redressing the inequities of the past. That's all from the National Development Plan. So that is where we're going in the next 20 years to complete what we started in the first 20. As we celebrate Human Rights Day on Friday, let us remember those who were injured and lost their lives in Sharpeville on the 21st of March 1960, when the police opened fire on demonstrators who were protesting against the pass laws. Later the same day, police fired tear gas at protesters in Langa in Cape Town, killing 3 people and injuring many others. House Chairperson, we value human rights today because for a painfully long time, most of our people had no rights. It was the blood of the freedom fighters and the social activists and the tears of the mothers and loved ones that nourished the tree of liberation and democracy. South African playwright and poet Napo Mashiane wrote a poem called Sunrise Voices, and I want to conclude with a few lines from the poem. Let us move earth and assemble our villages so that our tears can become raindrops for the sea of education, for the rivers of prosperity, for the lakes of democracy. Let us allow our fathers' spirits to stretch and match science, history, and politics. Let our unique voices teach us how to dig, plant, water our seeds, so we can buy our children smiles. Let our words call peace as ancient drums still our voices, sending us to a place where the love of unity lives. To draw our people as a unit, Let our sunrise voices shout, for we know where it all begun. We know where we are. We know where we are heading. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister. Honorable Gibbet, Premier of Eastern Cape.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Deputy Chair, House Chair, Deputy Minister, Constitution, Justice and Constitutional Development, honorable members of this House, ladies and gentlemen, let me greet you all. Good afternoon. Sihlalo osibambele lo mhlangano. Kungentsuku zatywala. Ilizwe lethu lonke lizabe libhiyozela usuku lwamalungelo oluntu. Likwakhumbula amaqhawe namaqhawekazi alwa jijisana aza oyisa urhulumente wengcinezelo. Awayethe gqolo engafuni siphile kwilizwe elikhululekileyo nelwathubelayo amalungelo oluntu. Ilizwe loxolo, ilizwe lobawo bethu. The unfortunate and gruesome killing of innocent and peaceful demonstrators in Sharpeville who wanted nothing else but freedom of movement without the humiliating practice of carrying a dompas remains a stark reminder of our painful past. When the apartheid police opened fire to our people on that day in 1960, killing 69 people and injuring 180, they didn't know that their act was the beginning of an end for the apartheid government amongst the international community. In recognition of the massacre, the United Nations General Assembly in 1966 declared that day as the International Day for Elimination of Racial Discrimination. So when we meet here and elsewhere in our country to celebrate Human Rights Day on Friday, the international community will also be recognizing what we went through by hosting the International Day for Elimination of Racial Discrimination under the theme, Racism and Conflict. Honorable Chairperson, there are two heroes of our people that came to my mind when I received the invitation to come and address this august House. I've thought about these two heroes not because I elevate them above other heroes of the struggle against oppression, but because of the recent painful events that relate to them. Elokuqala iqhawe nguSolomon Mahlangu, nyana kaMamata Mahlangu, who was the first MK combatant to be hanged by the apartheid government for his involvement in the struggle for a free South Africa. His last words, which will forever be entrenched in our history books, were, and I quote, "My blood will nourish the tree that will bear the fruits of freedom," close quote. Indeed, Solomon Mahlangu did not die in vain. His mother lived to see the freedom that he said his blood will help to achieve. We learned with shock the sudden passing of our stalwart Mamata Mahlangu, who was present in this House, in this Parliament, during the State of the Nation address, and convey our deepest sympathies to the family and friends who will lay her to rest tomorrow in Mamelodi, east of Pretoria. Iqhawe lesibini, liqhawe lehlabathi nelathatha inxaxheba emandla ekulweleni amalungelo oluntu, inzalelwane yelaphondo lempuma yeKapa, isithalande ongasekhoyo uNkosi uDalibhunga Mandela. Ngexesha lokuphila kwakhe, uMadiba Mde ube ngumuntu obeyithiyile inhlupheko, inkohlakalo, nenhlalo engekho mgangathweni, nto ezo ezikukunyashwa kwamalungelo oluntu. After his release from prison in 1990, he worked tirelessly to heal the scars of human rights violations that were suffered by black people in general and African people in particular. This he did by first forgiving the white men that took him away from his family and locked him up in jail for fighting for his ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony with equal opportunities. This he did by inculcating a culture of forgiveness, tolerance, and peace among the people of this country, a feat that surprised the people of the world who thought our country was on the brink of civil war. Kuyavuyisa ukwazi ukuba uMadiba sishiye uzalisekile umnqweno wakhe ukubona abantu bonke belilizwe behlalisene kakuhle ngokuhloniphana nokuvana. This we have managed to do in a short space of time because of the commitment and the dedication of the ANC and its government to promote, protect, and educate our people about their rights. Madiba would agree that we have largely addressed basic and first-generation human rights that relate to civil and political rights, as our constitution enshrines them with numerous checks and balances to protect them. Ebezavuma kanjalo ukuba esisele nakho kukunyuka umnqantsa wentaba ukuze sikhulule uluntu lwethu kwezenhlalonhle nezoqoqosho. Macandelo lawo athande ukusilela ngasemva. The huge socio-economic inequality between black and white people is the worst human right violation we are faced with currently. Yes, phenomenal progress has been made by our government to address basic services related to human rights, such as provision of clean water, sanitation, electricity, housing, etc. Our people can now access healthcare facilities at their doorstep. Our children can learn in properly built schools with adequate learning materials. Ngenene neziphumo ze-census ziyangqina ukuba ukuhanjiswa kwenkonzo ezifana namanzi, umbane, ugutyulo lwelindle nolwakhiwo lekliniki lwanyuka susela oko kwangenkhongolose ezitanjeni. Ezi nkonzo zingamalungelo oluntu yaye zibutshintshile ubomi boluntu ingakumbi ezilalini. Sibuyile isidima somuntu omnyama sukela oko kwangenkhongolose ezitanjeni. However, Honorable Chairperson, in many parts of this province where we are, Western Cape, which is the seat of this august house, the basic human rights of our people are still trampled on. Thousands of black people still live in squalor conditions, and their cries have fallen on deaf ears. Instead of addressing the cries of our people for decent housing, clean water, and accessible health facilities, the government of this province is busy perpetuating the racial segregation patterns of the apartheid government by trying to stop our people from coming to the Western Cape province. Let me remind the honorable members of this House and South Africa at large that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. Per our Constitution Clause 1 of Chapter 1, and I quote, Republic of South Africa is one sovereign democratic state founded on the values of equality, human dignity, advancing of human rights, non-racialism, and non-sexism. I have news for the Western Cape government. The Western Cape is not a sovereign island in South Africa. And our people have a right to come to Western Cape as much as they have a right to go to any other province in this country. That is the freedom they fought for. That is the freedom they will enjoy. The sooner this government stop their racial segregation stance and insulting our people, the better, as continuing in this trend will likely lead to conflict and take our country backward. Masimkhumbuze ukuba abantwana abaza apha baza konina noyise aba bangoneni no garden boy apha kuni bantu base Western Cape. Ngoko ke nabo ababazali bangabazali in their own right, they have the right to bring their children with kwezi ndawo bazokuphangela kuzo. Akho nyala kulonto, akho hlazo kulonto. Honorable House Chair, as we enter the new phase of our transition, we must accelerate the implementation of the National Development Plan to ensure that we address the socio-economic rights aspects of our people. We are going to need every citizen, group, community, and institution, as well as everybody, to put his or her own shoulder on the wheel and help us move South Africa forward at a significantly higher pace than we have done over the past 20 years. This requires men and women of character whose view of others is that of humanity, empathy, whose personality is that of diligence and respect for others' rights. As I conclude, I would like to urge members of this House to encourage our people in their constituencies to go out in their millions on the 7th of May to cast an unapologetic vote that will help us move South Africa forward. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Premier. Honorable Joseph.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Premier, Honorable Members, and Honorable Guests. Our presence here today, as members of Parliament, and indeed as members of a multi-party Parliament, is testimony to what we have achieved as South Africans over the last 20 years. We have come from a divided past to one nation and one future. The new democratic government decided that 21st of March will be celebrated yearly to reflect on human rights. And what gave rise to this? There are many reasons, but I want to highlight one today. The Sharpeville massacre, which occurred on 21st of March 1960 at a police station in a township of Gauteng province, happened after a crowd demonstrated against the past laws. Confrontation between the police and the protesters led to the killing of 69 people. Honorable Chair, this tragic event was revisited by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 1998, initiated by the democratic government after 1994. It is important that we know and we hear today that Sharpeville highlighted the struggle for human rights, hence the decision by our late President Nelson Mandela to sign the Constitution with the Bill of Rights into law at Sharpeville on the 10th of December 1996. Since 1994, government has introduced interventions together with NGOs in the private sector to improve the conditions of people living with HIV/AIDS, TB, improving the lives of disabled people and people living in poverty. Honorable Chair, it is an opportunity to thank all stakeholders over the past 20 years for their contribution in advancing human rights, human dignity, equality, and human freedom. Honorable Chair, as South Africans, we have many reasons to celebrate. However, we are facing a number of challenges we need to advance beyond. We need to advance beyond the bucket system that still exists in some provinces. We need to advance beyond poor sanitation and water supply due to lack of infrastructure. We need to advance beyond the lack of food and education for our children. We must advance beyond domestic and gender violence, human trafficking, and poor health care. We must advance beyond these senseless killings in our communities that is drug-related and gangster-related. Honorable Chair, the DA believes that human rights is underpinned by good governance, the rule of law, zero tolerance on corruption, well-trained police officers and nurses and teachers, sustainable jobs, and support our students. Agbare voorsitter, ons almal het 'n verantwoordelikheid om te sorg dat ons menseregte beskerm word. En ek moet nou daarom ook vir die premier van die Oos-Kaap sê, Honorable Kiewit, that the ANC here today in a position as premier want to criticize the Western Cape. However, the DA governs one province, the Western Cape, and the ANC
Honorable
governs
Joseph,
8 provinces.
Is that a point of order?
It is a point of order. You can raise it. I've got no problem, Honorable Chair. He wants to raise it.
No, Honorable Joseph. Honorable Mlenzan, is it a point of order? It is a question. You see now, Now you already dictated to me what it is. All right. It's a question. Are you ready to take a question?
No, I'm not willing to take a question, Honorable
Okay,
Chair.
he's not willing to take it. Honorable Mlenza. May you proceed? then.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chair. I want to point out to the Premier of the Eastern Cape who want to criticize the DN public, and I want to say the Eastern Cape is the worst performing province in South Africa. So the Eastern Cape is the last to criticize. Honorable Chair, government institutions, Chapter 9 institutions, civil society and all South Africans are guided by the rule of law, which is the cornerstone to enhance our democratic human rights.
If that is a point of order, can we take the point of order?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I'm rising now on a point of order that perhaps if the honorable member could be providing statistics which prove that really Eastern Cape is the worst performing, taking into consideration where the Eastern Cape comes from, not comparing the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape. Thanks, Chair.
May the House allow me not to sustain the order on the grounds that for him to provide statistics whilst he's on the podium is going to be difficult. But let us avoid making general statements that may provoke us to ask such questions or raise such points of order. Thanks.
Honorable Chair, I want to repeat, the Eastern Cape is the worst performing province in the country. Honorable Chair, in closing.
Honorable Joseph, I thought that my ruling was trying to create a balance, because I'm avoiding a question where you are going to be asked, can you prove insofar as statistics are concerned?
I don't have to provide statistics.
Can you rephrase maybe your statement?
Thank you. Honorable Chair, in closing. In closing, the best advancements we can make towards human rights is to live up to the legacy of our late president, our first democratic president, Nelson Mandela. I thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Muntsisi.
Thank you, Chairperson.
You may proceed.
My time, Chairperson.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairperson, honorable members, honorable Deputy Minister. The Human Rights Day finds us 20 years in our continuous effort to transform our country from being the pariah of the world to being a lodestar and epitome of the protection of promotion of fundamental human rights. Honorable members, we do not only have one of the most progressive constitutions in the world, but we are the envy of the world because of our abundance of heart to forgive, to extend a hand of reconciliation to our oppressors, but at the same time to seek redress for the historically disadvantaged, the marginalized, and the poor. As a result, the quality of life of ordinary South Africans has changed for the better in the last 20 years. Our protection and promotion of human rights, therefore, extends beyond first-generation rights to third-generation rights. In fact, it is correct to promote and applaud first-generation rights like the right to vote, the right to equality before the law, the right to dignity, the right to freedom of speech, etc. In short, therefore, third-generation rights constitute the actual translation of rights into concrete and conducive conditions of a better life for all the poor and formerly marginalized communities. This, therefore, becomes the arena of socio-economic rights, which speaks to the right to housing, the right to clean water, the right to education, the right to a clean environment, etc. Honorable Chair, let me illustrate this point through the seminal words of such. In the case of Port Elizabeth Municipality versus various occupiers in the 2004, the learned judge said, "The Constitution confirms that we are not islands unto ourselves. The spirit of Ubuntu, part of the deep cultural heritage of the majority of the population, fuses the whole constitutional order. It combines individual rights with a communication philosophy, unifying motive of the Bill of Rights, which is nothing if not a structured, institutionalized, and operational declaration in our evolving new society of the need for human interdependence, respect, and concern." As our theme aptly makes the point, we have and we continue to use human rights to change lives in the spirit of Ubuntu. In other words, it is through the fulfillment of human rights that the divisions of the past shall be healed. We need to recognize that we are because others are. The spirit of interdependence, respect, and concern for others should guide and impel us to assist the needy and protect the vulnerable. I should therefore make the point clear and unequivocal that improving the quality of life of all citizens and freeing the potential of each person is the responsibility of all. The spirit of Ubuntu has undoubtedly been epitomized in the person and life of our former president, Nelson Mandela. He, without doubt, demonstrated the abundance of love and embraced all and extended the hand of friendship even to his jailers. He further expressly invited everyone to unite in the building of a new South Africa. The sentiments and ideals of reconciliation embraced by Madiba are the same sentiments and ideals expressed by millions of formerly oppressed communities. Let me remind the Council that our Constitution is underpinned by 34 principles. Principle 3 of which provides that the Constitution shall prohibit racial, gender, and all other forms of discrimination, and shall promote racial and gender equality and national unity. Directly linked to Principle 3 is Principle 5 that provides that the legal system shall ensure the equality of all before the law, and an equitable legal process. Equally before the law includes laws, programs, and activities that have as their object the amelioration of the conditions of the disadvantaged, including those disadvantaged on the grounds of race, color, and gender. In other words, our Constitution transcends the imperative for people who are similarly situated to be treated equally. It is thus not sufficient that in the past 20 years we have removed racist and sexist laws from the statute books and ensured that the similar laws cannot be enacted in future. The need to confront apartheid legacy is recognized in the equality clauses in the Bill of Rights. In particular, Section 9(2), which permits measures designed to protect or advance persons or categories of persons disadvantaged by unfair discrimination. Honorable Chairperson, in the context of the history of our people, it is not sufficient that all persons are equal bearers of rights. I dare say it is not correct to claim that inequality is but an aberration that can be eliminated by merely extending the same rights and entitlement to all in accordance with the same neutral norm of standards of measurement. Let me further remind the honorable members of the words of the former Chief Justice of the Constitutional Court, Arthur Chackalson. As an abstract value, common to the core values of our Constitution, dignity informs the content of all the concrete rights and plays a role in the balancing process necessary to bring different rights and values into harmony. It too, however, must find its place in the constitutional order. Nowhere in this more apparent than in the application of the social and economic rights entrenched in the Constitution. These rights are rooted in respect of human dignity. For how can there be dignity in a life lived without access to housing, without access to health care, without access to water, or in the case of persons unable to support themselves without appropriate assistance? Changing lives through human rights must therefore mean that the dignity of our people should be restored through redress. It should be clear to all South Africans that no one can honestly claim to be a proponent of human rights while opposing employment equity, while opposing black economic empowerment. No one advocating for equal opportunities, and when the opportunities arise, genuinely fails to promote genuine human rights. No one advocating for the minority ownership of the means of production and minority control of economy is a true human rights protagonist. There are, Chairperson. Chairperson. There are those, Chairperson, that the redress in apartheid, there are those who claim that redress is apartheid in reverse. Again, Arthur Chackerson says, can one without a house be said to have dignity? Can one who cannot access health care be said to have dignity? Can one without access to sanitation and is using a bucket system have dignity? Yes. Can one who cannot support himself or her family be said to have dignity? Dignity is not an abstract term. Give a man or a woman a house. Give a man or a woman good health care. Educate his or her children. Give him or her running water. That is dignity. I want to make it clear to those who continuously made overtures in the past 20 years extending a hand of forgiveness and friendship, but the consistent snubbing of these attempts by those who benefited from apartheid is causing anger, and anger does simmer in our communities. Whether there is want and poverty situated side by side with opulence, wherever there is want and poverty situated side by side with opulence and plenty, the poor shall not rest until equity is reached. Let therefore begin to observe, let us therefore begin to observe reciprocation in the changing of lives through human rights.
Honorable Member, your speaking time has expired. Just finish up that sentence.
Let us, in the same vein, Chairperson, not oppose workers' rights, and let us observe and applaud the farmers who voluntarily hand over their property to government, because it is the right thing to do. Umuntu, ubuntu, ngabantu, mutu ki mutu, kabantu. Ditsautsa soka sibula, dihlolwa ke none ihlotsa. United we stand. I thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Make.
Honorable Chairperson of the NCOP, the Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, the Chief Whip, Honorable Members, Honorable Jaffery, Deputy Minister, Justice and Constitutional Development, Honorable Kivit, Premier, Eastern Cape, Salga representatives, ladies and gentlemen. At the onset, Honorable Member and Honorable Chairperson, I must indicate that sometimes we have a problem of people who have memory loss. People who choose only to remember what they want to remember and do not want to give us a true story of South Africa. Honorable members, I must remind those that have a memory loss that South Africa had Bantu stands. And part of the Bantu stands that we had included what we refer to today as the Eastern Cape. In the Eastern Cape, you had the Ciskei and the Transkei. And these were deliberately made in order to ensure that you have labor reserves in those particular areas. And those particular areas are what we call today the Eastern Cape. And therefore, the Eastern Cape is composed of mainly a rural areas wherein you do not have opportunities for people to get jobs. You do not have opportunities for people to have a better infrastructure. And therefore, Honorable Chair, it is a challenge that we are having in the Eastern Cape. We have to redouble and triple our efforts in order to ensure that the Eastern Cape becomes the same as the Western Cape. Honorable Speaker, as part of my saying that, Honorable Chairperson, as part of my saying that some of the things that people are talking about, they are not aware of because they have not grown up in that particular system. The systems that I'm talking about, Honorable Speaker, includes a system of the packet system. Personally, I have been to Alexander. I have experienced what a bucket system is. Some people tell us of a bucket system or else they have not experienced what that particular system means. We must also indicate that in the Eastern, it is from the Eastern Cape that we have heroes of our struggle, Vuyisile Mini, Nelson Mandela, and Walter Sisulu, who hail from that particular province. In the Western Cape today, we have Nyanga just around the corner in Guguletu. We have our people struggling, whereas people continue to tell us that the Western Cape is one of the best provinces in the land. I must indicate that as we were struggling, we wanted a unitary South Africa. We wanted a South Africa that did not include provinces, and that in the process of negotiations, we came up with the system where we have provinces.
Order, Honorable Maka. Honorable Town.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Is it parliamentary for a member of this House to refer to the President of the Republic as your President said so? That's Honorable Josephs.
Who's that? Who said
Honorable
that?
Josephs.
Huh?
Honorable Josephs.
Honorable Joseph, can you withdraw that? The President is the President of the country and the President of all of us.
It is the Speaker's President as well. Honorable Chair.
Can you withdraw that?
Honorable Chair, it is the Speaker's President, it's all of us, it's all our President, including the Speaker. That's why I said it is your President. I said to the Honorable Member, it is your President.
Honorable Joseph, just withdraw what you have said.
It's our President, but it's your President too, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Joseph, I said withdraw what you have said.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Continue, Honorable Member.
Thank you. I would like to thank Honorable Tau for keeping on ensuring that those that have a memory loss are always brought to order. Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Liz.
True.
Order. Honorable Liz, that's not a point of order. That's not a point of order. Continue, Honorable Member. Continue.
Thank you. Honorable Chairperson, Day after tomorrow, the 21st of March, our people through the length and breadth of the Republic of South Africa will be celebrating Human Rights Day. The human rights of our people in South Africa is embedded in the Constitution of the Republic and therefore enjoys the supremacy of the law. We salute the people, our people who participated in the Sharpeville march that led to 69 of our people being massacred. You must also remember that it was at this point that organizations were banished and banned by the then apartheid regime, and which culminated in some of our people being exiled. And to me, that in itself was a trampling of human rights by ensuring that people could not sit or stay in the land of their birth. It was indeed not by accident that the authors of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa saw it fit that a Bill of Rights be included in the Constitution. This was informed by the fact that our history was marred by the trampling of these rights in the name of apartheid supremacy. Our people suffered despicable crimes against humanity over a period of more than 300 years. In our province, Limpopo, we will not forget how our beloved Kgoshi Makgoba was beheaded and his head to this day cannot be accounted for. Honorable Speaker, I must Chairperson, I must indicate that the head of this king was taken as a trophy, and people had to run with that head for over 50 kilometers to Polokwane in order to show their masters that they had indeed killed King Makgoba. We cannot forget how our people throughout the province were forcefully removed from their areas of birth and displaced elsewhere. Honorable Chair, we cannot and will not forget how, during the state of emergency, which was declared around the 1980s, the students of the then University of the North were surrounded by gun-wielding South African police, which is the SAP, over a period of weeks, during which period some were murdered, assaulted, and even raped. Indeed, Honorable Chairperson, we have a good story to tell. And what we would ask others, it is what is their story that they are supposed to be telling to the people of South Africa. We cannot forget how the previous system of governance subjected the citizens of this country to heinous crimes that included...
Honorable Member, you are disturbing the person talking on the podium. Please take your seat. You will whisper to your friend later on. Continue, Honorable.
We cannot forget how the previous system of governance subjected the citizens of this country to heinous crimes that included but were not limited to detention without trial. Honorable Honorable Chairperson, I must indicate that amongst us, particularly amongst the members of the African National Congress, there are those who were subjected to detention without trial. And that particular thing, Honorable Chair, must not come back to South Africa because it is very, very bad. Arbitrary death in detention cells was the order of the day. Tear smokes enveloped the whole of South Africa. South Africa was like a war zone. In fact, if you talk about detention without trial, you can easily relate that to Hitler's concentration camps. Today, our people have the right to freedom of speech, freedom of expression. People have the right to dignity. And these rights, Honorable Chair, are subject to limitation. I want to use this podium to urge our people, as they do their protests, not to destroy the little that this government has done.
Honorable Member, your speaking time has expired.
Thank
just
you.
Just finish up your sentence like that. Okay. Honorable Van Rooyen.
Nee, ek gaan nie beklei nie, so julle hoef nie te worry nie. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Premier, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable members of the House, comrades and friends. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson, the history of our country is marked by centuries of struggle for freedom and democracy. Freedom from the tyranny of warlords, colonial oppression, and greed, freedom from unjust systems and laws, freedom from deprivation and human rights abuses. South Africa have waged a long and bloody struggle for democracy. Generations of the vast majority of the inhabitants of this country have suffered severely from the effects of injustice in different forms over the past 350 years. One would therefore expect South Africans to jealously guard and dearly cherish these hard-earned freedoms and guaranteed human rights as entrenched in the Bill of Rights at all cost. This constitution has been hailed as one of the most progressive in the world. Its vision for the country is one of progressive, non-racial, non-sexist freedom, equality, and justice. In 20 years, South Africa have managed to leap across a deep divide from an oppressive racist state to become a modern democracy in the world. Chairperson, it is important to constantly remind ourselves of why thousands of South Africans have sacrificed their lives for the freedom that we are enjoying here today. They are the true heroes of this country, and we should never forget them. It is because of their vision that we today have a Bill of Rights that is the envy of the world. Human Rights Day commemorates the dreadful day in 1960 when 69 black protesters were killed by the apartheid security police in Sharpeville. It is a reminder to all South Africans of what happened that tragic day and a warning that it can never allow to happen again in our country. Chairperson, I would like to call on all citizens of our country from all walks of life to observe Human Rights Day on the 21st of March of this month. In the true spirit and thankfulness of those who had made it possible, and in a proper appreciation of what this day truly means. It should not be just another public holiday for people to have a day of leisure and braaivleis, but it should be a day of reflection and appreciation. A day when the tales of the heroes from our past are told to the next generation to ensure that the meaning of this day is kept alive. Chairperson, each new generation must respect these fundamental rights as contained in our Constitution with the full knowledge and appreciation of how those freedoms were obtained. Honourable Chairperson, allow me further illustrate how important the principle of human rights is to the ANC by quoting from Chapter 2 of the Bill of Rights, namely, and I quote, "The Bill of Rights is the cornerstone of democracy in South Africa. It entrenches the right of all people in our country and affirms the democratic values and human dignity, equality and freedom," close quote. It then goes further to even place an obligation on the state to, and I quote, "respect, protect, promote and fulfill the rights in the Bill of Rights as to all people." Honourable Chairperson, the ANC, liberation has always meant to eradicate the eradication of racism and all other forms of inequality, and to the creation of a non-racial and free society. This is basically what the struggle was all about. The importance of human rights remains paramount to the ANC and therefore forms the basis of all our policies, and is also the framework within which the current election manifesto was formulated. The focus is placed on the following key commitments by the party to move South Africa forward in the next 5 years. Economic transformation and job creation, rural development, land reform and food security, education and health, human settlement and basic services, fighting crime and corruption to address remaining inequalities and to improve the lives and dignity of all those who have been deprived of it. Honourable Chairperson, before I conclude, I'm very, very sad today that the DA today stands here and tell us that and compare provinces to provinces. You know, Chairperson, every time I land at the airport here, I see this big wall that separates the township from the other people. Now that reminds me, I was fortunate or unfortunate to be in Israel not too long ago, and I saw a similar wall separating people. That is not human rights. They got the audacity to stand here and talk as if everything is well in the Western Cape. But if you go beyond the blue toilet curtain...
Mr. Van Rooyen, Honourable Faber.
Honourable Chair, I would like to know if the Honourable Member would take a question about the open toilets in the Free State.
Will you take a question, Mr. Van Rooyen?
I'll definitely take a question.
You can put your question.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I would just like to know
Order.
The hundreds of open toilets which was in the Free State, if they have been closed to give dignity to our people there. In the Free State, because it was usually said about the ones in Cape Town, then we found out there was more than 3 times as much.
Who's this making noise? We are listening at the question and Mr. Van Rooyen wants to respond. What's your question,
I would like to have
Mr.
the answer. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Honourable Chairperson, to be quite honest, I didn't know what he was saying. But I would think what he was talking about the toilets in the Free State. Honourable Chairperson, we're not today talking about the Free State. We're talking about the Western Cape. But just for his information, it has been closed. But let me conclude, Honourable Chairperson, that they are hiding behind this blue curtain of toilets in the Western Cape. If you go behind that, it smells bad. It looks bad, but they're not prepared to address that in terms of human rights. In conclusion, Honourable Chairperson, Human Rights Day should receive all the honour and respect it deserves and should be enjoyed by all South Africans on the 21st of March as a gift from those who paid the highest sacrifice. I thank you.
Honorable MP Temba.
Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Honorable Premier of the Eastern Cape in absentia, Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to address this House on behalf of the ANC in celebrating the Human Rights Day. A great and wise man said, and I quote, 21 March is South African Human Rights Day. It is a day which, more than many others, captures the essence of the struggle of the South African people and the soul of our non-racial democracy. March 21 is the day on which we remember and sing praises to those who perished in the name of democracy and human dignity. It is also a day on which we reflect and assess the progress we are making in enshrining basic human rights and values. Close quote. That great and wise man was our beloved former President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Chairperson, we are not only celebrating this historic day that marked a milestone in the turn of our struggle for total liberation, nor the move towards the changes in our country that has been engulfed by the apartheid system, but we are also celebrating the 20 years of changing lives through human rights. 21 March is South African Human Rights Day. It is a day which more than any other captures the essence of the struggle. March 21 is the day on which we remember and sing praises to those who paid the ultimate price in the name of democracy and human dignity. It is also a day on which we reflect, as I said, as the former president said, reflect and assess the progress we are making in promoting and protecting basic human rights. March 21, 2014 bears a particular significance because it precedes our Freedom Day event, where we will celebrate 20 years of our freedom. In the 20 years of democratization, we have introduced a human rights culture unknown in the history of the country. Indeed, when it comes to the aspects of human rights, we compare favorably with most established democracies, and in as far as the so-called third world countries, we are in fact pioneers. The onslaught of our people in Sharpeville in 1960 by the apartheid regime did not stop us in our forward march towards our goals that we aspired to attain in our struggle for freedom and democracy. Chair, the revolutionary struggle in South Africa was based on the Freedom Charter as described by Nelson Mandela in 1993. I quote, "We adopted the Freedom Charter in 1955 This is a document born of our struggle, rooted in South African conditions and expressing the aspirations of the disenfranchised. Because of its content, the Freedom Charter has met with international acclaim as an outstanding human rights document. The Freedom Charter provides a sound moral basis for law and lawmaking. It posed an inclusive basis for citizenship, close quote. The Constitution, which we are all proud of in our different political persuasions, provides for independent institutions that act as check and balances against any abuse of power. Honorable Chair, using this as our base guideline, we have succeeded in not only freeing the oppressed majority in the country, but even the oppressors themselves. The African National Congress is still committed and determined to promote and defend human rights. And this is demonstrated through a number of activities that we pursued in these 20 years of our reign. This is clearly evidenced in the pivotal role we played in the formalization and observance of our Constitution. It is a matter of great pride that our Constitution enshrines the negotiated expression of the will of the people of this land. It therefore ensures that the law protects all our people against abuse of power, against the indignity of discrimination, and against oppression of one citizen by another. Chair, the Constitution and the culture of respect and tolerance which it embodies are amongst the reasons we do not know that South Africa is today a respected and respectable member of the community of nations. Chair, when we say South Africa has a good story to tell, that is not an empty emotional rhetoric, but a factual statement based on the achievement advanced by the African National Congress, partly ensuring that the fundamental causes to the Sharpeville massacre are being redressed. We have the commitment and we are determined to move South Africa forward. The government has proven to be progressing in its effort to ensure that the people of South Africa live a dignified life in which there is no poverty, no illiteracy, no ignorance, and no disease. That is our commitment. We are determined to honor that pledge, and nothing will stop us from attaining that objective or carrying out our mandate in order to better the lives of all the people of South Africa. As we commemorate this day, after 5 decades of its happening, we should ask ourselves, where are we now? Taking wisdom from our father, the icon Nelson Mandela's word, I quote, never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another and suffer the indignity of being the skunk of the world, close quote. The ANC is committed to the betterment of our people's lives, has necessitated the establishment of the Ministry of Women, Children, and People with Disabilities. Rights have never been promoted and defended in the history of this country as it is the case during the ANC reign in the 20 years of our democracy. It is only the ANC-led government that has taken strong and drastic strides in promoting these rights and making sure that there is real transformation. Chair, we have a good story to tell. So I challenge everyone committed to human rights and the total transformation of our land to be part of this South African story. This story, honorable members, honorable chair, is based on the strides and achievements this ANC-led government has attained in redressing the evils of the past. Chairperson, yes, we may not have done all as expected, but we have upheld our promises to the people of South Africa. The reality is that one can't compare hundreds of years of oppression with 20 years of democracy. We have, to a large extent, achieved the set targets. The base we have created over the last 20 years for the development of a non-racial and non-sexist democratic society has given us a greater possibility to move faster towards the realization of the goal of a better life for all. And we are certain that our people will give the ANC a chance again to lead. We take pride in our achievements. Our ANC-led government has performed well on transforming education, health and security, human settlement, employment, crime, to mention a few, but not limited to. That is why we have a good story to tell.
Your speaking time has expired. Just finish up.
Human rights is the foundation upon which the ANC was founded. Hence, we promote the observance of human rights, not only for the victims of apartheid, but even for the architects of apartheid. I thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable J. Kunda.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Minister, and colleagues, Honorable Chair, today is a very important day for me. I need to make this announcement. I need to talk about human rights and celebrating each other. South Africans must stop being dishonest with themselves. The liberation movement, which is called the ANC, brought human rights to South Africa, whether you like it or not. That's the truth. And as long as you are dishonest with yourself, you will never ever see when people are doing good, you will always see the negative things, and you can never learn. The other thing that we really need to make right here, in 1952 there was a conference, and then Dr. James Morocco, which was the then president of the ANC, wrote to D. Malan and said to him, give him an ultimatum to repeal the 6 unjust laws. Listen to the reply of D.F. Malan. Listen what he said. And this is what brings me to what I'm going to say today. Malan said, we Afrikaners are not the work of men. I want you to listen to this thing. We Afrikaners are not the work of men, but a creation of God. It is to us that millions of semi-barbarous blacks look for guidance, justice, and Christian way of life. Close quote. Chair, I want to read something to those who still follow the old regime system. In Isaiah 45:15, thus says the Lord, the labor of Egypt and merchandise of Cush. Cush means black, means Ethiopia. Ethiopia is in Africa. And of the Sabaeans, men of stature, shall come over to you, and they shall be yours. Chair, human rights debating in South Africa is something that we can't take cheap. We must acknowledge that people have died for this freedom that we enjoy today. We must acknowledge that there was people who paid with their blood so that we can get freedom and speak our minds. We went to prison, Chair. We've been trapped. We've been kicked. Some of us have been shot. I've buried how many friends because we want this freedom. And today, people want us to keep quiet. I'm not going to keep quiet. I'm not going to tell a lie because I feel this pain. I was part of this pain. That's why our people are still suffering. And whatever the government is doing, we must stand still and ask yourself, where were we 20 years ago? We must ask ourselves, what have we achieved so far? Many things has been achieved in this government. many things that, and we must acknowledge that. And Chair, I strongly believe, and I want to say, Jesus said very important words, honorable members. He said in Luke 12:15, he said,
You have said that and close, your time has expired.
Hey, Chair, I have not even touched this speech, but let me close with this statement, Chair. Jesus said in Luke 12:15, he said, your value are not judged by your assets. Hallelujah. It is judged by who you are. Amen. And that, Chair, Reverend Gawe close in 1952 in Queenstown, he said these words when he opened the conference. He said, we must see ourselves as messengers of Christ, not apologizing for the color God gave us. Close quote. I hope I'll get another time. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Sinclair. Okay.
Honorable Chairperson, South Africans have a good story to tell. It does not matter if you support the ANC or the DA or COPE or the Freedom Front or even the EFF. We as a collective have a good story to tell. Anyone that's in denial of our good story is refuting the realities of the pre-94 state of affairs and South Africa today. Against the background of today's debate, the critical question I believe we need to debate is how we as South Africans catapult our country from good to great. Without being outrageous, how do we tell the rest of the world that we have a great story to tell? I believe that the only way we can do this is to reflect, to remember, and acknowledge the past, and build on the constitutional guidelines entrenched in our Constitution. The Bill of Rights in the Constitution is a codified testament of the values of our society. Primary to those, Honourable Chairperson, are the values of equality and human dignity. We can never forget what happened on the 21st of March 1960 at the police station in Sharpeville. Similarly, we can never forget what happened on the 16th of August 2012, which has now been labelled as the Marikana massacre. The fuse of these tragic events was inequality and the struggle for human dignity. Honourable Chairperson, Pope Francis said, and I quote, human rights are not only violated by terrorism, repression or assassination, but also by unfair economic structures that create huge inequalities, unquote. The reality is that the divide between the rich and the poor and the haves and the have-nots are too large. We live in a world where these divides are driving the citizens of countries to the streets in revolutionary ways that overthrow governments. Our good story must also include the economic emancipation of millions of poor and marginalized South Africans. To further deal with that, Honourable Chairperson, it is necessary on the eve of the 5th national election in South Africa to reflect on the political realities of our country against the background of a society in transformation. Firstly, is the fact that the African National Congress will win the election again. Secondly, is the fact that the Democratic Alliance will be the official opposition. Thirdly, is the fact that there's a populist movement on the left of the political spectrum that will become the 3rd largest political party in South Africa. And fourthly, there are a number of minority parties which will garner less than 2% support respectively. Taking these realities into account, each of us, Honourable Chairperson, must ask the question objectively. How are we going to address the challenges of our times in terms of unemployment, poverty, and hardship? Given the current political realities, I'm of the opinion that the only political party that can address these realities is a party that supports the National Democratic Revolution and the principles of the Freedom Charter. These principles and policies are firmly entrenched in the realm of social democracy. Honourable Chairperson, we need to enhance these economic policies to take South Africa from good to great. Then, Chairperson, we will not only having a good story to tell, but a great one indeed. I thank you.
Akora Honorable Mnguni. Honorable Mnguni.
Honorable
Yes.
Chairperson, I was saying,
Order. Yes, Honorable.
Honorable Chairperson, I was saying welcome back to Honorable Sinclair. Thank you.
I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. Honorable Mnguni, it's Honorable Liz first. I'm sorry. You can sit nearby here.
Honourable Chair, I stand here and I'm very proud to say that I was part of the struggle. I was harassed by the security police, and I was not a member of the ANC. But I am proud that I was part of the struggle, and today can be part of what is good in South Africa. However, Honourable Chair, human rights, what does this mean for the average South African today who finds it more and more difficult to believe in the good life they were promised, to the millions of South Africans who cannot find a job? I was amused to see that some countries seem to think that free access to the internet is now a human right. Incredible, when the majority of the world's population go to bed hungry. And Honourable Jeffrey, the ANC of the President Zuma has not rolled out electricity. It has given us rolling blackouts, let alone universal access to the internet. Millions of our people do not even have potable water supplied to their homes, let alone access to the internet. Certainly there has been 20 years of changing lives, but whose lives? The public protector has just told us that the Zuma family's lives have been dramatically changed for the better. Do our people really agree that it is right for President Zuma to have 250 million rand spent on his private and Nkandla residence, on the so-called fire pool that is no doubt used for poolside parties by the Zuma family? It seems that the ANC feels it's a human right to put their frauds, drunken drivers, corrupt and shady on their candidate lists. Dina Pule of Red Soul Shoes fame and who is being investigated.
Mr. Liz, order. Mr. Nzimande.
Chairperson,
On what are you raising?
the speaker on the podium, Chair, is completely out of subject, and I think that's out of order. He must address, unless he must answer the question, does he understand individual rights and collective rights and collective human rights of South Africans, Chair? But his speech,
Continue, Mr. Liz.
is
That's not a point of order.
It's not a
Continue.
point of order, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sorry that the Honourable Zimanda is not on the ANC list. Honourable Chair, to put the Dina Pule of Red Soul Shoes fame, who is being investigated by the Hawks, is on the ANC list. No, Honourable Chair, I do not think that our people will agree that the placement of these cadres who are clearly loyal to President Zuma should be in Parliament on the basis of a human right. Certainly the residents of Jacksonville who booed President Zuma would not agree. No, Honourable Chair, these are not honourable rights. It simply has to be in self-interest.
On a point
And I
of
thank
order,
you.
I want to reiterate the statement by Honourable Mnguni to say that Nzimane, to say the Honourable member is way off subject.
Sit down, Mr. Tau. Honorable Mnguni.
Thank you, Chair.
I'd like to start where Honorable Gunda said, where are we now? We're in the 20th century, or we're in the 21st century, 20 years after democracy. We're moving forward as South Africa to a future where everybody will enjoy human rights, where everybody will be free, where everybody have access to water. Unlike in the apartheid days, honorably, where less than 10% of the people in rural areas and less than 10% of people in urban areas had no access to running water. Today, more than 60% in every region. It could be in rural areas, better in urban areas, that we've got up to 75% of people have got tap water. That's where we are today from 20 years ago. It's much better. Honorable Chairperson, our struggle has been coalesced around the human rights. Since 1912, when the ANC was born, human rights have been at the center stage of our struggle. Chairperson, in 1948, the United Nations General Assembly declared 30 articles as universal democratic, universal declaration of human rights. When you look at these rights, the article number 3 says there shall be a right to life. That's a human right, a right to life. Now, 20 years in democracy, we dealt away with death penalty. Kalusha Bwala Mahlangu was one of our struggle heroes who died because of his beliefs. We took over as government and we implemented the human rights issue as declared by the United Nations. That is the ANC, that the vision, that in future we'd like to have South Africa that is free. But where South Africa stands today as far as the international rights are concerned? Take, for instance, what happened a couple of weeks ago. Article 9 of the declaration says that everybody shall have a right for asylum and to live in peace in that country he goes to. South Africa has been a champion in Africa in making sure that that right is observed. The passing away or the assassination of a Rwandan former official is something that we don't agree with. And South Africa has come out clearly to say, no, there won't be any other country that will come and assassinate its people inside the country because we observe human rights. That's a step forward from 1994 to 2014. Unlike when in South Africa, we went for the massacre in Lesotho, went for the massacre in Matola, in 1968-67, went for the massacre at Spolilo. That was South Africa that was against human rights or that was violating human rights. Today, we observe that we are a country that has human rights or cherish human rights. That is why even people from outside the countries today, from Mozambique, from Zimbabwe, or anywhere else, when they come and cycle in South Africa, they do have grants like any other part in South Africa. They've got access to water, access to medication. Those are human rights that we've been fighting for. The doctrine of human rights is a cornerstone of public policy and international policy or international law. And it is protected by national and international governments. As such, as South Africa, because we don't live in an island, we are also bound by those rights. Take, for instance, the issue of Ukraine and Russia. As today, Crimean, Crimea wants to move, or Crimean, according to the media, is want to move over to Russia. What does that implication have for us in South Africa? Because you must think that, or rather, we must think that that has got an implication into South Africa, as we import actually most of our maize from Ukraine. How does it affect our human rights? Because down the line, should this war go on, this Cold War go on between Russia and Ukraine and the US coming in, we are going to see ourselves starving. And that starvation is a human rights issue. Those are the issues that as we go forward in South Africa, these are the challenges we need to face with as we move forward. Chair. Yes, Honorable Joseph, Mandela signed the Constitution in Cape Town on the 10th of December, 1996, just as the United Nations declared the human rights on the 10th of December in 1948. That signifies that as South Africa, or as the ANC, we had a long vision that we would like to live in a country that is neighborly, that will ensure that there is peace and security in the country, not in the country only, but in the world. As we said in our manifesto, that South Africa would like to create peace and stability in the world. And we'd like to change all those multinational companies and institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, so that they also observe that though we are underdeveloped, though we are countries in Africa, we also have got the equal right to trade. We've got equal right to universal suffrage. Chairperson, in closing, Chairperson, I'd just like to say, as we go to mobilize for our parties, bring us back to Parliament or to vote us back as DA, as IFP, or as ANC, for that matter, encourage your people to vote for the right party. The party that will push, or the party that will make sure that there is human rights in South Africa. And there's only one party that can do that. That's the ANC. Because our struggle, right from the beginning, was coalesced around the human rights issues. I thank you, Chair.
I now call upon the Honorable Deputy Minister to respond to the debate.
Chairperson, thank you very much, and thanks to all the honourable members who participated in the debate. I'd like to just make some general points first. I think that everybody acknowledges that we have good laws. We've got a wonderful constitution, a wonderful Bill of Rights, and we've got good laws. The problem is the implementation of those laws and people knowing what their rights are. And that's where Parliament, and in particular the National Council of Provinces, has a crucial role to play to assist in educating people about their rights and to be close to the people, to take up issues and explain issues when they have problems with the implementation. So yesterday I was at the opening with the Minister of Justice of a new court in Kagiso, and you know, there were people who had a range of problems that they needed support with relating to their rights. And I hope that members of the NCOP will continue to play an important role in that regard, and in the new NCOP that will be established after the elections. The second issue is that we are who we are because of where we've come from. We cannot forget the past, we cannot wish it away. It informed who we are and what we are today. And it informed, and it's not just a history of apartheid, but a history of colonialism before that. So you can't, as some people want to speak about, you can't talk about an equal opportunity society where everybody is equal and is in the same position. When some person went to a former Bantu education school, which was under-resourced historically, has parents who were not well educated or were not educated at all, did not have books in the home, all those kinds of things. You can't talk about an equal opportunity society in that context. Equally, this issue of comparing provinces is quite similar. As the Honourable Make raised, the provinces are different. And that difference is informed by the history. The Western Cape, rather, is the one province that did not have any homelands, any Bantustans in it. And the Bantustans were historically places that were under-resourced. And after 1994, amalgamation of homeland administrations made the creation of a provincial administration more complicated. The Western Cape was lucky because it basically took the administration of the Cape Province. The Eastern Cape had to set up its own, and the Northern Cape, out of nothing. The Western Cape took its administration. So I would argue that governance in the Western Cape is much easier than anywhere else in the country. But I think the point is, as I think Honourable Make said, we are one country. There's no point in saying this province is better than that province because the provinces are different. It's the difference that we should embrace. So some provinces have different resources, better infrastructure, and so on. Let's accept that. Let's not try and say this province is better than that province and try and score points on that. But there are points with the Eastern Cape. The Premier's gone, but she was sitting next to me, and she'd pointed out that the education results in 1994 were 48.5%, that last year they were 64.9%, and the province of the Eastern Cape has built 1,560 new schools, and she says that no other province has built that number. But I think generally everybody accepts, it would seem in this debate, that we are better now than we were in 1994. Even Mr. Lees. And Mr. Lees, I must say that I was very interested to hear about your involvement in the struggle. Very interested to hear. If it was in KwaZulu-Natal that you were involved in the struggle, then I must say I'm quite surprised. But maybe you can enlighten me on what your involvement was out of this house. Because that's also one of the issues. It's very difficult to find anyone now, any white person who before 1994 supported apartheid.
On what are you rising, Mr. Lees?
I would like to know whether the Honourable Jeffrey will take a question.
I'd actually like to ask Mr. Lees a question. What exactly was your involvement in the struggle, Mr. Lees? But you can ask me a question if you like.
He will take a question. Ask a question.
He will take a question. That's wonderful. Honourable Chair, I was involved in student politics from 1974 to 1978, which I think perhaps the Honourable Jeffrey was still perhaps in nappies at that stage.
That's not a question.
So, the question, Honourable Chair,
that's not
is
a question.
What is Honourable Jeffrey's age so I can gauge?
That is not a question. Sit down, Mr. Lees.
Okay, Mr. Lees,
Continue.
I mean, it is the issue of that may be, but I mean, what did you do in the 1980s? That was when the human rights violations hit their high point. That was when there was the state of emergency. What did you do then? Were you in Ladysmith? Did you help with the whole issue of the resettlement, the forced removals at Cornfields, which is near where you were?
Order, Mr. Jeffrey. I will not allow a dialogue between the two members. Take your seat, Mr. Lees. Continue, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the issue is there's the story that you look at half a glass of water, and for the optimist, they will say it's half full. The pessimists, like Mr. Lees, it will be half empty. Now, in the case of delivery in South Africa, it's not a half full glass. It's a glass that's
Order.
almost full.
Order, Deputy Minister. On what point are you rising, Mr. Lewis?
Honourable Chair, is it parliamentary to refer to another member of the House as being pessimistic?
That's not unparliamentary. You can
No,
continue,
Honourable
Member.
Chair, it is a flaw, it is a slur on my character. If the Honourable Member had said that the Honourable Lees expressed pessimistic views, then that would be the opinion.
Let's not argue about words. Continue, Honourable Minister.
Thanks, Chair. But the issue is that the glass is not half full. The glass is much, much fuller than that. And I suppose the issue is it's election time, that you've got to try and point to the faults of the ANC government. But this quote, this statement that it's more and more difficult for people to believe in the good life, to Mr. Honourable Lees and to other people of his ilk, look at the statistics of delivery. Don't just look at them in the context of South Africa, but look at them in the context of the rest of the world in terms of developing countries. Has any other country in the rest of the world provided the number of houses that we have provided proportionate to the population? I'm not aware of that. Yes, there are still many people without houses, but what we have done and the achievement is quite substantial. As you come to elections, you have, I was on a debate, some of you may have seen it on Sunday night, you have parties making various promises. And I think what one really needs to say to the voters, and I hope that everybody will vote in the election as very much as a commitment to the people who died struggling for all people in South Africa to get the vote. But I hope that they will consider that you need to look at parties' records. And the government of the African National Congress has a very good record, a very good story to tell. For those of you who don't want people to vote for the ANC, then obviously you have to try and pretend it's not a good story. But it is a good story. And it's easy when you are not in power, not having to deal with issues of governance, to be like a toddler in a toy shop. I want that. You take a little child into a toy shop. I want that, I want that, I want that, without knowing how much it's going to cost and whether it's affordable. And that's a lot of what the policies, even of the DA, which is in governance in Cape Town and in the Western Cape, if you look at their manifesto, are like. How much is it going to cost? 250 to a large number of new policemen. Where did you get that figure? And where are you going to pay for it? And as for the smaller parties, it's really, well, you know, anyone can dream, but the reality of achieving things is quite different. So, Chairperson, I'd like to thank everybody, including the Honourable Lees, for their contribution to the debate. What is important is that we need to look at improving the human rights of the people of South Africa. We need to look at working harder to ensure delivery to our people, to overcoming underdevelopment and inequality, and ending poverty. And I thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. Just to inform the House that yesterday we had a lecture at the University of Forte, NCOP. It went on very, very well. It was a success, and I want to thank you, all of you that were there, and those who prepared the lecture. We had more than 4,000 students and academic people attending the lecture, and more or less all the questions that you are asking, we have answered. They have asked the questions, and this interaction with the people is very, very important to educate them about what we are doing as the institution of lawmaking. I think the next parliament will continue with that. Honorable Mokoro.
Thank you, Chair, to tell us about what happened in Forte. And I just want to remind you that you must also tell in this House, Chair, that yesterday we had 3 white councillors in Joburg who crossed over to the ANC. Thank you very much.
No, I didn't know that. Okay. Honorable members, order. You want to sneak in something in, Honorable Mohoro? Order. That concludes the business of the day. Members will remain seated or standing. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm told there is still one that you did not do, or one order. I thought you did all the orders. There are 3 orders. Let's do that. You are confusing us because you're now putting this and then you skip the other order at the end. Right. The secretary will read the 8th, 9th, and the 10th orders of the day.
Thank you. Order 8, consideration of report of interim joint committee on scrutiny of delegated legislation, draft regulation on criteria that military veterans have to meet in order to qualify for benefits made under section 24(1) and tabled in terms of section 24(3) of the Military Veterans Act 2011. Order 9, consideration of report of interim joint committee on scrutiny of delegated legislation, draft credit rating agency submitted for parliamentary scrutiny in terms of section 24(3)(a)(2) of the Credit Rating Services Act 2012. Order 10, consideration of report of interim joint committee on scrutiny of delegated legislation, draft housing development agency regulations submitted for consultation with Parliament in terms of section 32 of the Housing Development Agency Act 2008.
Order. Honorable members, the reports are for noting in accordance with the interim rules on scrutiny of delegated legislation. Any objection? No objection. Report noted in accordance with the interim rules on scrutiny of delegated legislation. That concludes the business of the day. Members are requested to remain standing until the procession has left the House. The House is adjourned.